Welcome back, folks. We still are running the Big Gary tees, so if you like the Gary and the Chipmunks t-shirts, we still have those going on for about another week and a half, with half of the proceeds going to the CCFR, so check that at the link there, or the link in the comment section below. And with that being said, let's get back into the episode. So today we're going to be talking about the recent issues in places like Surrey, Delta, which is in British Columbia, Canada, where they've been having issues with things like extortion, rising crime and violence, and a lot of gun violence. So this particular issue has been getting a lot of traction lately on places like mainstream media, global news, third-party sources on places like myself, YouTube, etc. So the recent issues with extortion, what does that mean for the people of British Columbia? What does that mean for the people of Canada? Well, put it simply, a lot of the extortion and things that are happening are within the South Asian community. So there's a gang that's referred to as the Bishnoi gang that has kind of taken credit for a lot of the extortion related cases, targeting mostly South Asian people. I guess people may also be asking why. Why are they only targeting South Asian people? Doesn't really make a ton of sense. Well, I kind of have my own thoughts about that. One being, I guess, politics within the country of India, between the region of Punjab in India and the rest of the region. Some political assassinations that ran back to the 1980s. People that are here very vocal against some of the things that happened in India. It's a very complicated situation that, of course, I'm not really equipped to talk about, as I'm not really from that community. Anyways, so they may be asking, why are they requesting millions of dollars from these businesses? I will tell you from my own personal experience, just from my lived experience. People typically who are Caucasian or may have grown up in Canada may be more trusting in things like the banking system here, and will keep more of their funds within a bank. The South Asian community is more likely to do things cash-based. Typically they will have something like a family safe within the home that does contain a large amount of valuables or cash. Also, having multi-generational homes is something that's also common, so having 3 generations people's worth of money potentially in a safe that is not within the banking system allows these people to also extort them for money without things like the police being able to get involved. If you're wondering why such large amounts of money is able to be given or is being extorted, because in a normal scenario the bank wouldn't even give that money to the extorter, it just wouldn't fly. And that's kind of how that all works behind the scenes. If anyone's wondering kind of why they may have not have said that, is because they don't want to imply that that community doesn't pay as much taxes, even though it's probably just, cause and effect of doing things in cash. Of course, there's going to be less things like transactional records to fall back on. So that's kind of where we'll start with this. So a lot of the people that are coming here who are also the ones like doing the hits or whatever, they're coming from places like India, of course. They're not really being tracked as well when they're coming in. Either that's going to be on something like a student visa or things like holiday to see a family member or something, at which point they will do these crimes, and by the time they're likely even caught or they know who they are, they're already back out of the country, in a country that's likely not to try and extradite them to Canada because they don't really agree with some of the political policies that we have in place here that have kind of let, in their mind, their opposition kind of fester. So without getting too political or choosing sides in that matter, that's kind of how that's all going down. So you have people such as Ginny Sins, not to be mistaken with another Johnny that sounds very similar. If you look her name up, his name will also potentially come up. Don't click on that. Anyways, where we're going with that is, so Ginny Sins is a radio announcer, works at a South Asian based radio show in Surrey, which was shot up and tried to be extorted recently. She was on global news I've tried to find the interview. They have scrubbed the interview. What she basically said was the security that people are allowed to hire are not allowed to be armed. So you're basically putting unarmed security up against armed individuals, potentially multiple attackers, and all they're armed with is a cell phone to call the police. Well, believe it or not, most people who are homeowners also have phones and can call the police themselves. So having basically a meat shield isn't really going to do you much good. So that was the main thing that she mentioned, which obviously needs to be changed. You need to be allowed to have armed security, at least, or concealed carry, at the very least. This is getting absolutely ridiculous within British Columbia. The things that have happened with David Eby, it's insane, which we'll get into more. He's putting pressure on the CFOs to make it impossible for them to be able to have people protect themselves. Absolutely BS. The other part of the Ginny Sins interview is that she has overheard conversations with extortion victims and the police, being Surrey Police. Surrey Police has basically said that they can have cars out front of the house for 3 or 4 days here and there, but ultimately they're spread fairly thin. They cannot be everywhere at once. They ultimately have a 5-minute response time, whatever, which is fairly fast. Police are minutes away, seconds count, and that's the issue with that one. So Ginny Sins essentially went on to say in the interview, if you guys are not going to protect us and put the bad guys in jail, then we're going to go buy guns and we're going to protect ourselves. And the cops basically don't want people to be able to buy firearms for the reason of self-defense.
Police are now investigating people in the targeted home for allegedly returning fire.
It was very terrifying. I mean, it still is.
Global News has learned the homeowner had been receiving extortion threats for weeks and had reported them to Surrey Police.
We share everyone's frustrations, but that isn't meant to condone vigilantism or taking up arms. You are putting yourself at risk and you're putting your community at risk.
We've got to pivot on what is going on right now. Law enforcement has to bring back some credibility within the community to show that they can protect them. Because right now, nobody within the community feels that law enforcement will protect them.
If you have a PAL application, which 700 people have asked recently for an emergency PAL for the reason of self-defense against some of these extortions. Legally, you are not allowed to say on your PAL application that you have a gun for the reason of self-defense. You can only say target shooting or hunting. Even while I was taking my PAL course 7 to 8 years ago, there was a couple in the course that were specifically taking the PAL course because their home had been broken into, they were held at gunpoint or knife point or something to that effect, and after that they felt like they needed to become gun owners to be able to protect themselves. The instructor told them that if they said that is the reason why they needed a firearm to the firearm center, that they would not be allowed to have one. Makes absolutely no sense to me. Within Canada, there are some reasons why you should have a authorization to carry. The reasoning in the late 90s when the newer laws were put into effect to not allow people to have things like handguns and carry them around was that in specific circumstances, such as one being in danger of their life, either through threats of violence, extortion, other means like that, would be granted a license for concealed carry based off of those circumstances. Which leads me to my next story based off of somebody that I personally know who was in an experience like this. Trying to apply for an ETC within the last 1.5 to 2 years to have a restricted firearm and carry that restricted firearm around. The person they spoke to, Chief CFO, said that they have guidance from the NDP side. It says that they cannot issue a concealed license to anyone within the province, and they have not within the past 5 years. At which point, that person brought up the Hardeep Singh Nijjar case and said, well, so you had prior knowledge to him potentially having his life under threat but wouldn't offer him a option to have a concealed carry. There was no option for armed security for him either. And now even the person who is in charge now is under threat and was basically pitted with the decision of being judged by 12 or carried by 6. And one of the people in his group, of course, took it upon himself to protect himself, which is a very big thing within the Sikh faith, such as the reasoning for having the kirpan is to protect your other fellow community members. It's not to actually just go around stabbing people, even though that could be misrepresented. Or depending on the individual, maybe they shouldn't be carrying around a knife. Of course, that's on a case-by-case basis. But then that's why you get to the reasoning of, oh, it should be by a license, or you should have to have a reason, and then they just never let you have it to begin with, which is kind of why it just ends up making more sense to just have everything be a free-for-all. When it comes to it. Anyway, the police willingly knew that they were under threat. They have all the information behind the scenes, being able to tell what's going on your phone, etc. But they're gonna leave you out there as a sitting duck because they'd rather you just get frickin' murdered by somebody rather than potentially you being able to save yourself and then them looking useless because realistically they can't really even do their jobs if they wanted to because their hands are tied by very left-leaning judges, crappy liberal governments for 10 years plus, and people like David Eby who are green leaf, unicorn fart loving little, I don't know, living on pixie dust and broken dreams. And then as of most recently, there's been a pushback, as you've seen with the South Asian community wanting to arm themselves because the police aren't doing it for them. Culturally for them, that is an acceptable thing because even from the country they come from, the government allows reasoning of self-defense and will even let you have things like an old style 38 Webley kind of design. So basically we're at a crossroads where the government doesn't want you to have any guns. They're letting people into the country doing whatever they want with illegal firearms and expecting you to still pay them tax dollars. And then when you go ahead and defend yourself, then they're going to try and jail you. It makes zero sense at all. They'll put you in jail for like 15 years for like defending yourself or not having your gun locked up properly, but then like some crackhead who has like 3 AK-47s are like, oh, sorry little Jimmy, you lived a hard life. Oh, you're on a conquered land, you're conquered people, now we're gonna Gladeau report, and oh, we owe you money now, believe it or not. That's how that, believe it or not, you're the victim, even though you murdered a family of 3 who didn't do anything to you. Believe it or not, you're the victim. Get out of jail free, my friend. All these things coming together are big, big problems, especially when even the mainstream media, they're cutting through the point of, they're telling you enough where you can make your own decisions based off of these things, but not giving you the full picture. I don't know, to seemingly save themselves, to make themselves not look like they are either being one-sided or racist or something, even though the truth is the truth. I mean, it's speak truth, shoot straight, stay free. If you want to stay free, you gotta speak truth and you gotta shoot straight, so be a straight shooter. That's the whole point. I'm done my rant now. I'm just pathetically unimpressed with the Surrey Police Department. Of course, they're one of the only police forces in Canada that's signed on to the assault weapons ban to do the collection and destroying of the assault weapons. So go figure, the police force that is about the most useless in all of BC is also the one that wants to take your guns from you. And then you have people like the RCMP officer that was on Global News going back and forth with the reporter saying that this isn't a crisis, believe it or not. It's not a crisis to have people not able to defend themselves in their own country with people who are oftentimes not even from here perpetrating these crimes, but they have more rights than the people who are being victimized. And then they do things like claim refugee status. There's too many loopholes. We need to put the hammer down, stop with all the BS. I know there's issues with people saying, oh, whatever, it'll turn into like an ICE scenario. Get the bad apples out. A couple bad apples spoil the bunch. The people who are being most productive are bearing the brunt of all the other people, and they're already paying more taxes to pay for all their stuff, and then they're being victimized over and over by the people whose things they're paying for. It makes no sense. And at a point, it almost becomes more cost effective to just pay these people who are the troublemakers, who are legally here, to just stay home. Just pay him to stay home. Give him a CERB. It's cheaper than paying the legal costs. Give him, of course, not free drugs, but set him up with enough money for basic payment, whatever the amount would be, and just get them to the point where they don't need to be effing with everybody else's stuff, is my personal opinion. Something's gotta change. This is ridiculous. We need concealed carry within Canada. We need it to be a legal right. We need people to be able to either have it based on a target-based course, have it be like a 3-day course with use of force, something to that effect. Yeah, I know in Canada there's a lot of issues even with like the RCMP. There's way more use of force training here than there is in places like the States. They get like 3 or 4 years of use of force training. It gets to a point where instead of wasting all these tax dollars, like of course if the person is unarmed, naked, running towards you, probably shouldn't have the right to shoot somebody, if you know what case I'm talking about. Obviously if they're naked, you know they don't have any weapons on them, so you have no excuse and you probably should be in jail. But in another circumstance where that's not the case, then yeah, if somebody's coming at you with a weapon, blast them. It gets to that point. Take them off. Take them off the scoreboard. I'm tired of all this crap. You're giving them too much leeway. Then they're gonna sue us. Then they're the victim. Then they only get like 6 months in jail. Just blast them, bro. As I said, the concealed carry needs to be more widely available. It needs to be legally attainable. People like David Eby, who are not realists, but they're more idealists, need to get out of the way, stop ruining places like British Columbia. They're going to be a little island pretty quick, because I don't see Alberta putting up with this for much longer. So they're going to have to learn to fend for themselves pretty quickly. And there's a lot of internal issues with all the things like DRIPA and whatever else. It's a really not a great place to be in already, and then you add all these added issues with the government and extortion. It's the Wild West. So that's the thing. Is Canada back to the Wild West? Is it back to the old gold rush days? Do we need to bring back the old hang and judge? Well, that's a question that you can answer yourself. Leave a comment down in the description below and let us know what you think.